6:30. See you then.
OK, well, thanks very much. We'll see you a little later on. Now, we want to talk about the referendum that's coming up on the 23rd of June, because David Cameron has accused the Vote Leave campaign today of, in effect, trying to mislead voters by peddling untruths about the EU. Mr Cameron said that people should listen to the warnings from leading economic experts about the impact, the potential impact of withdrawing from the EU. Vote Leave says that all of this means today that the Prime Minister is basically in a bit of a panic. Well, tonight Mr Cameron will be taking part in a question and answer session on ITV, as will Nigel Farage, the UKIP leader, and Vicky Young, my colleague, will be following those exchanges and following them from the spin room, as it's known in Westminster. Vicky, first of all, your sense of where these debates are likely to lead tonight?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? The people taking part in them say that they're uncertain about how much influence they have, but of course there could well be undecided voters watching. And it was interesting today listening to David Cameron. He is clearly concerned that people are going to sit this referendum out. He sounds like someone who thinks that people maybe aren't taking it seriously enough. He clearly wants to get people involved. But there's been an interesting intervention already today for Nigel Farage ahead of that TV event tonight. He's been under some pressure to talk about and explain comments he made at the weekend about the sex attacks that took place in Cologne at New Year. Now, he was asked whether he thought they could happen here in Britain, and he said, well, it depends if they get EU passports, it depends if we vote for Brexit, it is an issue. Now, today, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, has been asked about those comments at a select committee here in the House of Commons, and he said that Mr Farage had crossed the line. He said that the comments were inexcusable. He said it was giving legitimisation to racism and pandering to people's fears. Now, I've just spoken to Nigel Farage ahead of that TV interview from the audience tonight, and he says that he's done nothing wrong, he's got nothing to apologise for, and he feels very strongly that the public back him on all of this. He says he was talking about cultural differences between young men who are coming from the Middle East as migrants coming into the EU, and he says they have a very different view of women than people in this country. Now, there's no head-to-head debate tonight. There will, though, be an audience quizzing Nigel Farage, followed by the Prime Minister. Interestingly, Michael Gove and Boris Johnson from the Leave side have challenged David Cameron to a head-to-head debate.
OK, Vicky, an intriguing prospect if it ever happens, but we'll talk to you a little later. Vicky Young there for us. Now, we've had several debates on BBC News at 5 in recent weeks on the referendum question, and today we're doing something slightly different. We're sampling views, how can I put it, across the generations, because we have 93-year-old Harry Leslie Smith with us, an RAF veteran, a big Remain campaigner. Harry, welcome back to the studio. It's nice to see you. We're also joined, I'm glad to say, by Hani Mustafa, who's a 15-year-old from Peterborough. I'm going to just say once again, Hani, you're too young to vote.
I am, yeah.
Which I'm sure you regret. However, it's clear to us as well that you are engaged and enthusiastic, and you are certainly a Leave campaigner. Yeah. You're on the Leave side, OK. And with us as my friendly referee, we have Jonathan Portis, who's from the National Institute of Economic and Social Research, who's here as an independent figure to give some views on facts and figures. Jonathan, welcome. It's good to see you. I'll start with Jonathan, actually, give us some context, because when David Cameron talks today about looking at the potential economic impact, as he sees it, of leaving the EU, how do we measure something like that, and how reliable is that kind of measure when it happens?
Well, putting numbers on it is extremely difficult. I think David Cameron is broadly correct when he says that the consensus, the majority of economists, not all economists by any means, but the majority of economists do think that, on balance, leaving the EU would do some economic damage to the UK economy.
Long-lasting or in the short term?
In the short term, there would certainly be some turbulence, but probably how much we don't know. But probably actually it's better to look at the long run. And there, the Treasury, for example, has come up with this figure of about 6% of GDP, or £4,300. You really should not put very much weight on numbers like that. And I think it's fair to say that the government has certainly exaggerated by saying that leaving would cause a recession or would cause us to lose 4,300. You cannot talk about would in a context like that. It is fair to say there is a consensus that it would do some damage. Putting numbers on it, I think, is often very misleading.
OK, well, that's useful. Hani, what would you say then to viewers thinking, oh, I'm not sure which way to vote, but having heard that some damage to the economy is likely, difficult to quantify, Why would people take that risk? What's the answer, do you think?
Well, I think it's worth bearing in mind all these economists and various international bodies, you know, were the very same people who told us that we'd have this huge recession, things would become an absolute mess if we didn't join the euro. And thank God we didn't listen to them, because if we were in the euro now, we'd be in a pretty bad place. But I think, you know, there's the economic side of it. But I think, you know, to me, this is about sovereignty and having that ability, you know, to make our own laws, to control our borders and, you know, spend money as we want to. I don't want to see unelected European commissioners deciding how our money's spent, you know, and having such huge influence. I mean, these are people we can't kick out, you know, we have no say in how they're appointed, you know, and they're not accountable to us. So I'd suggest, I'd hope as well, that people would vote leave on the 23rd of June and, you know, vote to take back control of our laws, our borders and other...
It's more a case of sovereignty
to
than
me, personally.
the economic. Harry, for you, with your perspective and your decades of life experience, is it a matter of sovereignty? And do you think people are right to be concerned about issues of sovereignty here?
They should be concerned. They should be very concerned. Because to me, I remember in 1930, the British government became isolated. It was isolationism, and it was a disaster. My family were the first migrants, I guess, because we travelled from Barnsley to Bradford hoping that we could get work, and we didn't. And it entailed that my family pretty well starved to death. I and my sister had to go around behind richer restaurants, root through their garbage at the back to find scraps of food to eat. And this is what they want to return to.
Why would they return to that, do you think? Why do you make that equivalence?
Because they're not giving any explanation for what and where we are going to get what the EU supplies to us. Is it because they think they can get a cheaper deal somewhere and make more profit? Or is it because they don't know which direction to go either, but they don't want to be in the EU?
You've raised the crucial thing, because you say what the EU gives us, and actually lots of the debate, Jonathan, has been to do with how much money we put in and then what we get back, and there's been a lot of debate around that 350 million figure. Now, if you were to be asked today directly, what does the EU give us, which is a pretty broad thing to say, how would you quantify that?
Well, the most important thing that the EU gives us in economic terms is membership of the single market, and one of the largest single market in the world, 500 million people with no trade barriers, not just to goods but also to services. And that is quite a big deal economically. The key question, it seems to me, in terms of what would happen is, well, what would happen to that were we to leave the EU? The leave argument is that not only would we do a deal with the remaining EU, which would continue to give us access to their markets and them access to ours, but we would also be able to do deals with third countries like the US, China, India, which the EU doesn't currently have trade deals with. So really, it seems to me, I'm not trying to argue this one way or the other, how you regard the plausibility of the leave case depends crucially on how plausible you think it is that we would be able to do these successful deals were we outside of the EU.
Because again, we're into this leap in the dark territory, Hani, aren't we? Because lots of the argument we've heard is that Leave campaigners are saying, of course there'd be an alternative deal because they'd want to be trading with us. They'd want to be doing business with us. But it is a leap of faith, isn't it? Because that certainty isn't there.
Well, I think, you know, there's uncertainty in everything we do. However, I mean, I'm not going to lie to you, you know, things may, you know, there are risks either way. However, I think the bigger risk is staying in. You know, we don't know if our budget contributions to the EU will go up. We don't know if Turkey might join the EU.
But we know we have access to the single market if we stay in.
Well,
that's a certainty, isn't it?
Well, it is a certainty, but, you know, we'll continue trading with the EU even if we do leave. I mean, they rely on our trade just as much as we do. So the idea that we wouldn't have a trade agreement with the EU if we were to leave is just simply not true. And if we did leave, we'd be able to, you know, as the gentleman over there said, we'll be able to make our own trade agreements with countries the EU has simply not managed to do.
There's a big issue today as well, Harry, isn't there? Can I just change the focus slightly? Lots of the debate in recent weeks has been about levels of immigration. this has been part of the debate. What is your thought on the emphasis that is being put on that? People presenting the argument that without withdrawing, if you don't withdraw from the EU, you don't have the kind of control over borders that you need. What is your thought on that?
Well, there is one way to make sure it wouldn't happen, but it will probably never happen, and that is if each country had the same wage structure and the same price of labour to their inhabitants, then there would be no reason for them to move away.
But that's never going to happen.
No, people move away like my family did from Barnsley to Halifax to make a little more money. And
but that's not going to change in the sense that people will go looking for work, won't they?
If we leave the EU, it also means that you will more than likely have a breakup of the EU countries, which puts us in more danger again from struggle and wars.
That's a crucial point, because it's looking at it the other way, isn't it? I suppose as a Leave campaigner, maybe you wouldn't be too concerned about what would happen to the EU after that. But do you think that there's a destabilising effect, which could have quite a big impact on us as well?
Well, I think, if we do leave, I mean, various other countries and various other polls have shown that if Britain does leave, then other countries might follow. And I see that as a good thing, actually, because, let's go forward, let's set the way, let's show to the rest of the European countries that there is a life outside of the EU, a much more positive, progressive life where we can take back control and, do things the way we want to do.
On immigration, Jonathan, when people talk about the possibility of reducing numbers outside the EU, what does your analysis tell you on that? Which is that if there was a Brexit scenario, what kind of impact could that have on migrant numbers?
Well, I mean, Vote Leave are quite clearly right on this one. That unless we leave, then free movement of workers will continue within the European Union, and that in turn means that we will continue to see significant net immigration from within the EU. And the only way of doing something about that is indeed to leave. But that wouldn't mean that there wouldn't still be hard choices if we left, because while you might reduce immigration from outside the European Union, those people are coming to do jobs and they are boosting the economy. Some people on the Vote Leave campaign have said that we would increase migration from outside the EU in order to fill some of those skills gaps, but that means in turn that immigration overall might not come down that much.
A quick thought to each of you, because we're talking today about registration numbers and people taking part in the democratic process. Harry first, we were discussing earlier that more than 7 million people haven't registered, and the deadline is, for most parts of the UK, is midnight tonight. Your thought on the importance of people having a stake in their future? You are 93 years of age, you've got a benefit of long life experience behind you. I'll come to Hani in a second, who's 15 and has got, this is a decision that will impact on the rest of his life. Your thought on the importance of this process now?
I think this is going to be the most important decision Britain will ever make. It is something which tears at my heart, because I can see a collapse of Britain coming from this decision to separate from the EU. And I've had a lifetime of watching history repeat itself in all countries. And it is time that people started taking a bigger interest in what is happening. Unfortunately, people have become so disappointed with governments and what they have delivered to them that they talk about migrants. The biggest migrant to me is a migration of cash to offshore
centres.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that angers me no end. Those people did not pay their legitimate taxes on that money, and they prevented Britain from building new hospitals, new roads, new bridges. They've held us back 20 years, and it's time that it ceased and they were made to pay their dues.
On the issue of registration, Hani, your thoughts? Are you surprised that so many people are not registered ahead of this referendum?
Well, I think perhaps, you know, clearly, especially amongst young people in particular, there is a disillusionment with politics. You know, they just see the TV, they say, how does this impact me? How is this relevant? But I think this decision is a lot bigger than any general election. You know, this is our once-in-our-lifetime opportunity. And, you know, you can't just stress how important it is to get out, sign up and vote. And I would encourage anyone, you know, listening who hasn't signed up. It doesn't take long. 5 minutes. It's on the government website. Sign up. Have a say in how your country's run.
It's good to talk to the three of you. And thank you very much, Harry and Hani. And Jonathan, thanks for coming in and providing us a different perspective as well. Good to see you all. Thank you very much.